Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of Season 4, Let's Talk.
I've performed with many people around me. Group kami always. But I don't have a group na group ko talaga. Like, kunyari, mastermind o kaya street boys, mga ganun. Wala akong ganun. Every program, ang ginagawa ko, kasi parang, ito, sobrang thankful ako sa school namin kasi doon talaga nalabas yung talent ko in dancing. Doon na sharpen baga. Kasi binibigyan nila ako ng opportunity na mag-choreograph, sumayaw. So parang in my perspective, yung nakikita ko na yung mga dapat makita as choreographer.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy, and this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. Before we get into this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to whichever platform you are using. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at The Rajiv Show. Hey folks, welcome back to The Rajiv Show. And the funny thing about The Rajiv Show is that we go international. We got guests from foreign lands, and we got guests from you know from from all around the Philippines. This is gonna be a special treat for you guys because this this conversation is a perspective of a young teenager and his perspective on, of course, living in the pandemic. So I know this intro is a bit long. I want to encourage youngsters to have a conversation with them, and this is the first. I think this is the first or the second youngster that I've interviewed, and he's one of the most interesting characters that we've met in the community. I love his vibe. I love his energy. Folks, let me introduce my guest today, Richard Bautista, all the way from Manila. Hey, pal, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? Thank you very much, Kuya Rajiv, for having me here. It's been a pleasure na talagang, wow, I'm in your show.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much. I mean, I know. I think this is our second take on the conversation. The last time it was really very
Yes,
bad,
yes.
so this is our second take. And of course, we're gonna talk about you. We're gonna talk about you and all about you. So, aside from the honorable mention that I mentioned, uh, could you give my listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
Oh, okay. So, hi guys. Well, I'm Richard Bautista and I am a student, a aspiring entrepreneur, and aspiring CEO, and a leader. And yes, that's it. Actually, I'm so happy because um, I have this community, the Philippine Podcast Directory, na talagang tumutulong sa akin here in my podcasting life. And I'm also a podcaster. So, yun, that's a short, brief, introduce, um,
Intro-
yun,
yeah.
introduction.
I mean, we've had like a lot of amazing guests up to this point. It's a huge honor to have a youngster at least. Because I feel old. That I've been talking to a lot of the old, young old folks and thing. So yeah, let's get into let's get into the series. And this time, normally, of course, in the conversation, because as I mentioned, I've spoken to a lot of old folks and older, yeah, older folks, and I love them. And this time I'm gonna take back. I'm gonna take this question, this opening question, and ask you a question. If I were to time travel or time move into the future where you and I are classmates, you mentioned leader. You're a leader. Who are you aside from
Yeah.
leadership? Who are you if I was your classmate in your school right now, wherever you are, prior to the pandemic and all that thing?
Ayan, so if magiging kaklase mo ako, siguro ako yung tao na aside from being a leader, hindi ako masyadong in academic side.
Hmm.
I'm more on in the curricular activities such as dancing, performing in stage, helping people, motivating people, and sa inside a classroom or in my friends,
Hmm.
ako yung tao kasi na nasa gitna.
Hmm.
Ako yung minsan I'm ambivert.
Hmm.
Minsan extrovert, minsan introvert. So, kapag naanuhan mo, pag na-tsempuhan mo kung nasa introverted zone ako, mood of myself, tahimik lang ako.
Oh,
I'm just looking the surroundings.
yeah.
And then, ano lang, tingin-tingin lang. Ganyan, parang nagmamasid-masid lang, ganyan. And then, once na extroverted person na ako, once na dumating na yung mood ko na intro-extrovert, ano na, parang wow, ano na siya, parang makulit na ako, ganyan-ganyan, I'm outgoing. Basta depende siya sa mood eh.
So,
Yun.
so kung sakali, if you were, it's very funny. You mentioned that you transfer from introvert, ambivert, and then extrovert. But when you went into the podcast community, you were directly extroverted and you were the talk of the town. It's kind of funny.
Wow.
You were
Thank you for that.
you became like the living legend because of your signature sagwan. Oh man, we should get that trending.
Sagwan.
Hashtag sagwan. It was, yeah.
Sagwan.
That's a new hashtag.
Shout out to Sir Christian.
Yeah, you guys made it popular. It's really cool. I mean, you mentioned extracurricular, so that means sports. You're a sporty type, or is it just that extracurricular is like the creative side, dancing, arts, and all that stuff?
Yes, that's the word. Yun yung kanina ko pang pinaprocess sa utak ko eh. The creative side. Yun. Hindi ako more on academic, more on creative side ako. Yun yung word na talagang pinaprocess ko pa sa utak ko kanina pa eh. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm into dancing, performing, and hindi ako masyadong sporty guy. I'm more on a combat guy.
Combat in the sense
I
MMA?
like boxing. Oh yes, like
MMA.
boxing, Muay Thai. Yes, MMA. Kasi ang MMA parang ano siya eh, combination ng all of the martial arts, mga ganun.
Yeah.
Parang mixed na siya. But my main combat na gusto ko is the Muay Thai. Yun talaga. Yun talaga yung gusto ko na mapag-aralan and ma-practice pa na skill. Kasi growing up, my father was always watching the mga Manny Pacquiao, mga Sylvester Stallone, mga Van Damme, mga action movies. Yes. And then ako, nasa gilid lang ako, nood lang ako ng nood. Kasama ko daddy ko. And then, parang gaganahan ako na pag napapanood ko yun, parang ini-imitate ko yung mga moves nila. Tapos, sumisipa-sipa ako, sumusuntok-suntok ako. Not in person, but sa mga punching bag, sa mga shadow boxing kumbaga. And then one time,
Huh.
kasi on YouTube
Huh.
on my YouTube,
Yeah.
parang nanonood-nood din si Daddy ng mga MMA. Yun, dumating na doon sa point na martial arts,
Huh.
yung Chinese, yung Wing Chun, yon sila
It's Bruce
Bruce
Lee.
Lee,
Bruce
sila
Lee.
Jet Li, yes,
Yeah.
oo. Tapos,
Interesting.
so habang nag-i-scroll ako, nakikita-kita ko na, ay, maganda rin to. Dati, mga action, yung parang unrealistic na mga bugbugan,
Huh.
ito, parang realistically na siya na from Wing Chun, martial arts, tas yun na, nakita ko na si Muay Thai. And yun, combination siya. Hindi lang siya boxing. You can use your elbows, you can use your knee, you can use your shin, which is real life situation.
Yeah.
You can use that talaga.
Yeah, true.
Hindi ko naman sa binobutchered yung yung Wing Chun. Super respect sa mga nag-Wing Chun, sa mga ko-combat na mga ganon. But in real life situation, yung between life and death na talaga,
Yeah.
mas nagagamit in our real life yung Muay Thai or other combat. Again, I'm not disrespecting the Wing Chun community. Okay? Disclaimer. It's just that my opinion na in real life situation, kumbaga, Muay Thai is for me lang naman.
It can save a life.
Yes. And actually MMA.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Muay Thai and all that stuff, but your perspective is much more different than the perspective of someone who gets into MMA and boxing and all that stuff. What I mean by what I said is that you know who is that guy? Yeah, I think this guy who Conor McGregor. In England, he used to be. He comes from a tough neighborhood, and then he used to get to people beat the shit out of him. So it was kind of like the motivation in itself is getting beaten up, and then and in the end, he became the greatest of the greatest in MMA. I don't know if I don't know if I'm right though, because there's a lot of goats. There's a lot of goat debates here, especially in basketball. And I mean, I know it's irrelevant basketball and what I said, but the whole point is that there's a lot of debates. So from what I know is Conor McGregor became the best of the best in the business, and that's the funny thing about him. But he was bullied. The fact that he was bullied, that became the motivation, and you're coming from a different perspective, so it's very funny. You saw it from saying from watching, so it's more influence than saying, which is interesting. MMA. You. I hope that you have a nice conversation with Coach Franco. Shout out to him if it's he's tuning in.
Shoutout.
Yeah,
I'm hoping na magkaroon kami ng time for conversation like the MMA stuff.
yeah. I mean, he's he comes from good stock. I mean, well, because he's a legend in his own community, and I'm not exaggerating. I have tremendous respect for MMA, and so from what I've gathered, the information that I've gathered. You said dancing. The funny thing that we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk in the creative order here. We're gonna talk about dancing, leadership, and entrepreneurship. We're gonna wrap that up. That's gonna be our creme de la creme. So dancing, because I can relate to you. I can relate to you because I'm sure you've seen that the videos of me doing Michael Jackson. I can't believe I actually shared those, but yeah, that was my high school. I used to do a lot of Michael Jackson imitation, back then I had short hair. It was
Hmm?
funny. Only after I left high school I had long hair, but all the Michael Jackson moves died after he died in
Oh.
2009. But yeah, I gotta ask, when you are in because yeah, I want to ask first before I actually share my views. When you perform, do you perform solo or do you perform with a group mostly? When you perform, do you perform?
Hmm. That's a good question, huh? Well, all of the time, I've performed with many people around me. Group kami always. But I don't have a group ko talaga. Like, kunyari, mastermind o kaya street boys, mga ganun. Wala akong ganun.
Hmm.
Every program, ang ginagawa ko, kasi parang, ito, sobrang thankful ako sa school namin kasi doon talaga nalabas yung talent ko in dancing. Doon na sharpen.
Hmm.
Kasi binibigyan nila ako ng opportunity na mag-choreograph, sumayaw. So parang in my perspective, yung nakikita ko na yung mga dapat makita as choreographer. Well,
Hmm.
I'm not super expert as in super duper expert in choreography, but yung mga simple task of being a choreographer, parang dahil sumasama din ako sa mga choreographer na iba, parang na-adapt ko kung ano yung mga ginagawa nila. So yun, I'm always na may kasama in dancing. But
Hmm.
in my YouTube, kasi nagpo-post din ako sa YouTube ko
Hmm.
ng dancing videos.
Hmm.
Puro solo ako doon. So if
Hmm.
you like to watch that dance videos, you can go to my YouTube, Richard Bautista. Nag-plug no?
Bilis, bilis.
So yun,
Yeah.
swabe lang. So yun, laging solo. Kasi, I don't know, ewan ko kung maganda tong maganda tong perspective. But para sa akin,
Ah.
gusto ko kasi no parang mala Ken San Jose na yun once na dancing parang maano na nila once na tinawag na Richard Bautista
Ah.
ma-associate na nila as dancer, performer,
Yeah.
mga ganun. So parang ewan ko hindi ako hindi komportable Mas gusto ko nung wala akong permanent na group in
Hmm.
dancing. Ewan ko kung bakit.
You meaning to tell me that you're not satisfied being with a group, or you're not satisfied being associated when it comes to performance wise?
Hmm, hindi ko gusto yung hindi pa nagkakaroon ng moment ko ganun.
Huh.
Parang mas gusto ko yung mas marami akong groups na masalihan,
Huh.
kumbaga. Na
Okay.
hindi ako matatali sa isang group lang. Ayun.
Okay, okay,
Ayoko
makes sense.
matatali ako sa isang group lang.
Okay, it makes sense
Ayun.
now.
So mas gusto ko yung meron akong option na pwede akong sumayaw dito, pwede ako sumayaw sa grupo na to, ganon.
Kasi yeah, alam ko naman
Hindi pa
kasi, yeah. Nakaka-relate ako din kasi alam ko naman yung 'di ba yung mga groups mayroon silang mga dramas and all that stuff.
yes,
So yeah.
oo. Yun ang
Yeah.
mahirap.
But that's good. At least you know yourself well enough in that regard. But
Mm.
I want to ask this. I don't know if you've asked anyone asked you this question when it comes to performance, leadership, or otherwise. Do you have like a particular ritual before you get on stage and perform?
Oh, okay. Okay, I like that question, ha? Ah, wow. It's good. Kasi ako yung tao na na once na hindi ako kakabahan,
Huh.
lagot ako doon. Kasi para once na hindi ako kinabahan,
Huh.
Sa pag magpe-perform ako, parang hindi ko na ilalabas yung tunay na ako.
Huh.
So parang kailangan kong kabahan para i-work ko yung sarili ko na ay kailangan ko mas maging magaling sa pagsasayaw, ganito ganyan. So
Huh.
ang ginagawa ko before the performance, before coming up on the stage,
Huh.
inaano ko yung sarili ko, parang na-pump up ko yung sarili ko na kailangan mong galingan, ganyan. Parang pinipressure ko yung sarili ko
Huh.
na you should you should perform well. But
Huh.
once na tumapak na ako sa stage, I don't give a shit na talagang perform. Parang hindi ko
It's like
hindi ko na iniintindi.
it's like, do you have like an alter ego or something like that when you perform?
What hindi naman. Parang ang sa akin lang, before ako pumunta sa stage, parang minomotivate ko yung sarili ko na, ay, kailangan kong galingan. Parang sariling pressure, kumbaga. Kasi
Okay.
may time na parang, ay, alam ko na to. Ay, hindi na ako kakabahan. Sanay na ako dito sa maraming tao.
Hmm.
Ganito, ganyan. So, nung nag-perform na ako, parang hindi ko nabigay yung 101% ko because comfortable na ako eh.
Hmm.
Comfortable na ako. Pero
Correct.
ako, sa utak ko,
Huh.
kailangan hindi ako maging komportable. I need to get out of my comfort zone. So parang in my mind, iniisip ko na, ay, kailangan ko mas galingan. Every time na aapa ako sa stage na yan, kailangan mapapanganga yung mga audience. Makikita nila yung tunay nung group namin and tunay na galing nung pagsasayaw ko. Yung parang pag pinanood nila ako, feel nila yung emotion ng music, yung
Huh.
mismong dance, para mga ganun.
And your
So yun yung
storytelling.
parang ritual ko na,
Okay.
yes,
Interesting.
kasi basically dancing is, for me, dancing is parang you're telling a story.
Correct.
Lalong-lalo na in my genre na
Hmm.
pagsasayaw, which is lyrical,
Hmm.
yun yung parang pinaka gusto ko, yung more on emotions, kumbaga. Yung parang malulungkot na kanta, tas nilalabas ko yung emotion ko dun sa kanta.
Wow.
Mga ganun.
The funny story that I could share when I mentioned the word alter ego is because the alter ego thing, I think the only alter ego came out of me was when I discovered that there was a possibility of creating a character within your art. This is a little bit philosophical conversation. When it comes to art, sometimes our own personalities, we do not have the ability of expressing ourselves contradicting our own personal life because so I don't know if you agree with me on this, is that some of us have the personality of uh being relevant to certain things, like you know the reason why I'm asking about the whole high school thing is because there's a certain way of understanding a person in high school, knowing that okay, that's their personality, and then they grow up. Let's say, let's take an example. When someone is a jock or a sports guy, evidently in his life, in his future, that's his personality because he grew into that environment. So with that regard, he is like he's gonna go become a footballer or a basketball player and dominate. And then yeah, that's how it goes with normal thing. And when it comes to the arts, it's much more personal because you're creating art. You mentioned it. You mentioned it perfectly that you're creating art. But here's the tricky part of it is when you're an artist, you sometimes do not know the line between art and thing, because sometimes when you're creating, uh, you create you create the art which is from your heart and is genuinely from your heart, but sometimes it has a conflict with who you are as a person. Let's take the
Oh.
famous Lady Gaga. You know, she comes up with all these weird characters, but then she knows her thing. She develops certain characters for certain songs and certain things, and when she performs, um, who else do who else has a Saint Vincent? I'm sure you've heard of Saint Vincent by name. Saint Vincent, Annie Clark is her real name. Created Saint Vincent because she wants uh, to create a character to portray her music and to have that flexibility that Annie Clark doesn't. I don't know if you're getting the picture though. I don't know if you're painting the same picture that I'm saying here. It's just that
Mm.
creating alternate characters is like a way of understanding. Okay, when you're performing, when I used to perform, I have the same feeling. It doesn't matter who you are on stage. It's the stage is the audience and you on the stage. But when I created my own persona, when I started performing live music, that was when things got a lot more interesting because Rajiv Doreswamy on stage is not the regular Rajiv Doreswamy that you meet. I don't know if you got what I'm
Mm.
saying though.
Okay.
Rajiv Doreswamy
Yes,
that
I
you
got
meet,
it.
like now, I'm chatty, I'm bubbly, I'm somewhat weirdly introspective in terms of what I do. But when you see me on
Mm.
stage, it's like a different demon altogether. For those who are religiously think, I don't mean to say I'm a satanic spawn of the devil. Yeah, but I'm a different character. I'm a different character altogether in that regard because when you're on stage, you're singing the songs, you memorize the lick and all the stuff. It's not about what you remember that makes that moment count as a performer. It's all about how you make it count as an artist, as a performer. So if you make it
Yes.
count as an artist, as a performer, as Rajiv Doreswamy, it won't be as authentic as your character that you made, at least because like I mentioned, goes back to Annie Clark and Saint Vincent, is that you have the flexibility of being another character, creating this as your art, and that is something you can dominate in. So yeah, that's an
Mm.
interesting stuff. It's an interesting introspective that you should check out when you're dancing. Is that, do you, when you dance and you're in the mirror, when you feel that, do you feel like you're presenting this as Richard Bautista, or you're performing this as someone else? And then make friends with that
Mm.
something else. And although, yeah, sometimes a lot of people who don't know how to control their other characters end up being disillusioned by reality and all that stuff. But yeah, that's the negative side. But we're talking positives here, creating characters for the sake of the art and creating. The
Yes.
best example that I know is Annie Clark and Saint Vincent, which is the latest. You gotta check out David Bowie. David Bowie and Ziggy
Mm.
Stardust, you know, he created a character called Ziggy Stardust. And how the character was made is the character apparently is an alien person that came to
Mm.
Earth to only perform music in order to appeal to certain, to sing. And he dominated in his own. Actually, Annie Clark, Saint Vincent is actually inspired by David Bowie, because although she is female, but
Mm.
yeah, she made the character. She made Saint Vincent, and they actually look similar. You should check it out. Saint Vincent and
Mm.
who else pa? Wrestling. I mean, I never knew that you were talking about MMA and fighting. Wrestling also. Pro wrestling. Who do
Mm.
I think about that is very proficient? The Undertaker. We all know and love The Undertaker,
Mm.
We all grew up with The Undertaker and the character, when we all know that his real name is Mark Calloway, but when he's on the squared circle, diba? He
Mm.
he is the Undertaker, and whoever is in his way, he'll kill them in the Undertaker fashion. So that's the idea of creating a character. But yeah, that's
Yes.
just
Yes.
my side. for me, when I started playing music, I wanted to create another character that would represent my music, and at that time I was so obsessed with the bass, so I came up with the alter ego called Raha the bass. But although the longevity of that life never really lasted long, so I said goodbye to Raha the bass after my last gig, which was 4 or 4 or 5 years, 3 years. I don't remember how long, but yeah, that was like my insight. So yeah.
Actually, it is very interesting na you mention, parang nagkakaroon ka ng other persona
Hmm.
in, kunyari, kumakanta ka. You mentioned that pag you're into music, parang nag-iiba yung personality mo na pinoportray in art
Correct.
of
Correct.
music. Kasi
Yeah.
doon compared doon sa Rajiv na totoo.
Yeah.
Kasi ako actually na-realize ko din na yung genre ng music ko is all about emotions, dark emotions, na sad emotions, na parang broken hearted. Mas gusto kong sayawin yung mga very emotional na songs na pinoportray ko in my dancing, na malungkot yung songs, yung love life or yung love nung song. Parang pang heartbroken. Pero personally, ako, yes, dumadanas ako sa mga pagiging broken hearted. Pero hindi ko siya masyadong dinadamdam. Like, dun sa, in my personal life, parang hindi ako masyadong emotional in terms of relationship.
Okay.
But in my dancing, parang sobrang naiiba yung persona ko, na parang sobrang sakit nung sayaw, na parang ako mismo napapaiyak dahil sa sayaw na portray ko or na create ko. Parang ganun. It's good. No? Actually, ayos ah. I like nung mga sinabi mo na may persona ka dito, may persona ka in your personal life. Wow, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that eventually, sometimes one thing, since we're talking about persona, the funny thing about it is that you don't expect much of what your character is going to do. Those are the funny things that we're talking about, alter egos. It's because of that, the moments, and you cannot really discount the fact that anything can happen during those moments, you know. And that's
Yes, yes.
the thing. That's the thing about the arts. It doesn't really matter doesn't really matter what medium it is. MMA, dancing, as long as you're doing a creative output that is defining you, you know. And yeah, that's when I pick up a bass, you know, it's an automatic switch, and
Yeah.
I don't really say that, it's not like summoning a demon or something. Raha the bass, come out, hindi naman yung ganon. Yeah, it's like an automatic switch. Once you're there and you're playing the music, you're in that moment. It's That's how it is when you play. Basically, that's how I feel when I perform. And the funny thing,
Yeah.
I don't think I've shared this with anyone, is that when I perform, I have a particular hairstyle. I don't think you guys noticed that. I have so many weird hairstyles over the years. But the one particular hairstyle that I want is that Chinese hairstyle where there's a ponytail in the back, but still the hair is overflowing. I don't know if you guys can imagine that image. That's basically, if I have that hairstyle on, that's Raha the bass. It's not me who's performing, who's there in that moment, because that's one part of the signal, like, when I perform. But then, yeah, that's the beautiful art of saying dancing. Wow, I couldn't believe we actually spoke about dancing. The thing. Yeah, I mean Michael Jackson. It was all Michael Jackson for me. My era was Michael
Mm.
Jackson. It's funny. I've memorized all the albums of Michael Jackson. I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. I think I even did a dedication, but yeah, somewhere. but but yeah, I love Michael Jackson, and once I got
Oh,
into the music side of things, I discovered a lot of music, and yeah, one thing led to the other, and that's when I built my character off of that, and then yeah, I developed the character, and then until I
yeah.
had to kill the character. So yeah, that's basically that's a basic story of how creative, you know, how creative you are. You sometimes it's like carrying a bag of something. It's just that you do not know what that thing is, and you know, uh, you you need to adapt to it. So if you're carrying a bag of beans, of course you need to have a stronger
Mm,
bag. Let's say you're carrying the heaviest of heaviest. You have to
mm,
either use a car or something where you carry it. So that's the main uh, metaphor for for artists. You know, you have to have an output for yourself. But yeah, anyway, moving on from
yeah.
dancing kasi nabubulol na ako. It's an amazing it's an amazing experience. You're an artist. Explore the realms of creating characters as long as you know you don't lose yourself, your true identity, your Richard Bautista identity, then you'll be fine. So yeah.
Yes.
Moving on from dancing, let's go into leadership. But folks, before we get into
Mm.
the leadership style, folks, we're gonna have a short break, and we'll be right back after these few short messages. Do you want to get great deals? Go to Pipe Marketplace. Visit pipenetwork.co/marketplace and use the promo code TRS to get exclusive discounts. Chat with them now. Basta Podcast, Pipe yan.
Hey everyone! We are the 3am Avenue podcast series, ang hashtag tropang madaming ebas.
Here to have genuine conversations about life, love, career, and many more.
Don't forget to search for us on Spotify. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at 3am Podcast Series to hear more about our Tropas Kwentuhans, adventures, and journey towards reaching our goals. See you, mga katropa!
FC
Hey, pal.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv show. And my guest today, the youngest, I feel old. He made me feel young. My guest, Richard Bautista, and we were talking earlier on the first half of our conversation. We were talking about dancing, and it's interesting that I'm sharing this with a fellow dancer about alter egos and how to express yourself. It's a nice journey, and you guys got to tune into the
Mm.
first half of it. Now we're gonna transition from dancing into leadership. Leadership is one thing that I'm inspired by, and as a young person, you know, I think your first collaboration was, I think, with Bryken Dial, the Young Leader podcast.
Yeah.
And how was the feeling, first of all? You know, I never really asked you after that. How was the feeling talking to the
Grabe,
legendary? Yeah.
sobrang hindi ko ine-expect na mangyayari yun. Sobrang thankful ako na nangyari yun. Kasi, ano yun parang nung pagkapasok ko sa Podcast PH, parang si Sir Brycan agad yung bumungad na parang na-catch yung eye ko kagad na Brycan Dayaw, the Young Leader Podcast. So, nanood ako ng mga videos niya on YouTube. And then, after watching his videos, parang sobrang na-inspired ako, sobrang na-motivate ako sa kanya. And na-curious ako. And kinausap ko siya. This is the good thing. I'm so lucky because I came in the right time.
Yeah.
Kasi parang, kasi I know Sir Brycan is very busy person. Pero once na parang nakausap ka niya, sobrang genuine niyang tao,
Oh,
sobrang
yeah.
totoo niya. And talagang bibigyan ka niya ng importansya. So ayun na nga, minessage ko siya and then very lucky ako na bigla siyang nag-respond agad right after. So ako parang, yun kasi yung first time na moment na may napapanood ako sa YouTube and
And then,
minessage ko.
oo
Tapos
nga eh.
nag-respond immediately.
Yun
So
nga
ako,
eh.
wow, grabe. I was so amazed na grabe. Tapos yun, nag-usap-usap kami. Actually, nagpa-mentor ako sa kanya.
Ah.
Nagpa-mentor ako. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Sir Dreyan. Kasi ang pagkakaalala ko nun, sa Podcast PH, parang nag-post ata ang PPD
Oh.
na parang sino yung gusto nyong mga collaborate here
Oh.
in Podcast PH, mga ganyan. Tapos,
I think I remember that.
si Sir Dreyan, tinag niya si Sir Brycan. So, parang dahil doon, nabigyan ako ng moment na mapansin ni Sir Brycan. So, minention ko si Sir Brycan na The Young Leader Podcast. Tapos, inano na Sir Dreyan, parang minention ni Sir Dreyan si Sir Brycan. And after that, history na yung nangyari. Ayun na, nagpa-mentor ako sa kanya kung ano-ano yung mga mali ko na dapat kong i-improve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yun kasi, ganun akong tao na parang gusto ko na humingi ng criticism sa iba. Kaya sa perspective nila kung ano pa yung pwede pang i-improve sa sarili ko.
That's good.
So, ayun, nag-usap kami through Zoom. Tas, nag-react siya sa latest video ko noon, which is the Sagwan-Sagwan. So, ayun.
Sagwan-Sagwan.
Yun yung #Sagwan-Sagwan. So, yun. Tinuro niya sa akin kung ano yung mga dapat kong improve. Tapos yun, inabsorb ko lahat. And then, ayun, sobrang sarap sa feeling nung na-interview ko siya kasi sobrang dami ko pa natutunan na bagong stuff. And kaya ko rin ginawa yung podcasting.
Yeah.
Kasi I want to interview people na parang nakapunta na dun sa gusto kong path na puntahan. Na parang sila yung parang free consultation, mga ganun. Or free mentoring just for 1 hour. Na lahat ng mga gusto kong improve sa sarili ko, may improve ko by them. By asking them questions, significant question, and by being interested sa kanila. Hindi lang basta kasi gusto ko may makuha sa kanila knowledge. No, talagang interesado ko sa kanila na gusto kong makipag-close sa kanila, gusto kong mag-add din ng value sa kanila na I don't know kung paano, pero gusto ko talaga makapag-provide ng value sa mga tao, sa mga audience, sa mismong guest ko. So, ayun. Basta yun.
Interesting. I love it. I want to take it back a bit. I want to take the conversation back a bit. From
Yes.
when was the nature of leadership started? When did that journey for you began? I don't think you've I've asked you this question before. Is there a particular story where something was going wrong somewhere in school or at home where you said, okay, there's a problem, and then I decided, okay, I need to step up my game and do my thing? Is there a particular moment in your life, a story that made you a leader?
Okay. Siguro yung kasi meron akong time na I have a friend na parang ang gulo-gulo nung buhay niya. Na hindi in bad hindi in bad na gulong-gulo. Parang nabubuli kasi siya.
Okay.
Tapos friend ko din kasi yung yung nambubuli sa kanya. So kinausap ko, para nag-step up ako na do the right thing. So, yun yung first na sinabi ko sa sarili ko na hindi pwedeng ganito na parang ito-tolerate ko yung ganito, yung bullying. So, by my leadership, parang ini-eliminate ko yung bad bullying. Kasi merong para sa akin lang naman, merong good bullying and bad bullying. Yung good bullying, ito yung sa mga tropa mo. Yung tropa mo talaga, kasi yun yung parang magbaband kayo together eh. Yun yung bonding nyo. Yung parang pag-roast sa isa't isa in a good way.
Yeah.
And yung bad bullying, ito yung yung dinatanda down ka talaga ng mga tao. Which is, hindi ko kayang atimin na pabayaan na lang na ganun.
So, wow, that's an interesting insight. Huh. Interesting. And so that's the story. It began from bullying, and then it inspired you to say, I guess that's your beginning, or
actually in the beginning kasi yung ate ko, which is 2 years kasi kami, mas 2 years siyang ahead sa akin. Tapos parang yung ate ko kasi is very very in academic side, very excellent siya talaga, as in no-brainer. Consistently either first honor, second honor.
Wow.
Yun nasa dalawa. Never siya nag-third or pababa. Lagi siyang first and second.
Okay.
So ako, hindi naman ako hindi ako nainggit sa kanya. Parang na-motivate ako na I have to step up then my game. Na I have to find my craft. Na kasi yung ate ko nagli-leader rin. Nagpe-president, ganyan. So na-inspire ako. So by that, parang nung LM days ko, hindi ko pa yung leadership skills ko, wala pa. Parang batang lang ako batang ewan lang nung elementary. But nung pumasok ako sa high school, because yung expectation nung mga tao sa ate ko is super ganda. Once na sinabi yung pangalan niya, parang na agad,
there's a standard.
magaling, matalino, outstanding. So, nung pumasok, kasi 2 years na siya 2 years siyang ahead sa akin. So, nung pumasok ako sa school, tas nalaman nila na, kapatid ka pala ni Richard Bautista. So, ganito, ganyan. So, parang may hindi naman siya hindi siya pressure sa akin. Parang it's a motivation na sumali sa mga extracurricular activities para makapag-lead sa others. Ewan, siguro yung influence niya na sa pag-lead niya din ng mga tao. Kasi lagi siyang class president. Kasi alam naman natin na in Philippines, ewan ko sa ibang bansa, pag first honor ka or second honor, parang most of the mga tao parang panatag sila sa'yo na ikaw yung presidente. Pero, so lagi siyang president in her classroom. So parang ako, na-adapt ko yun. Tapos, doon na nagsimula yung leadership ko. Parang nagkaroon ng election for whole campus of student council. And then my sister became the president of the whole campus, and I was the assistant secretary of the whole campus. So yun, doon na nag-start. Doon na siya nag-start na parang ang sarap pala mag-serve sa people, ang sarap paglingkuran ng mga sa kapwa mo. And then, parang hindi na siya naalis sa akin na tumulong lang ng tumulong for orderly ng organization. And then after that, the assistant secretary, I was elected maging president of our classroom. That was grade 9. Yung naging president ako ng student council, I was 8th grade. So, on my 9th grade, parang naging presidente ako ng classroom namin. And doon, parang na-boost ako, parang unti-unti na nagkakatotoo yung leadership. Kasi once na presidente ka ng classroom, ikaw yung sa kanila mag-lead or magiging model sa kanila. So, high school, early high school pa lang, parang naging na ako, parang minold ko na yung sarili ko as model, role model. Pero I'm not saying na I'm very pure na sobrang bait Siyempre, lahat naman tayo may bad side, may good side. Pero yung pinapakita ko sa mga tao is kung ano yung gusto kong mangyari or gusto kong maging outcome ng organization. And then after the presidency of classroom, grade 10, ito na, nung grade 10 ako, this is the parang sobrang highlight nung pagiging leader or high school life. Because naghawak ako ng 2 major organizations of my school.
Okay.
Not just my school, but our whole bayan or city. Kasi, first, sa school, na-elect ako as the corps commander of the COCC. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
No, not really.
Parang parang army siya. Parang ROTC sa college.
Okay.
Pero sa high school, COCC and C18 tawag sa kanya. Nandito yun, nagfo-form kami. We are training on how to be a soldier. Yung parang basic grounds or basic techniques ng pagiging soldier. Ganyan, yung formation, yung pagsagot, pagsalute, mga dapat ginagawa, basic respect. So yun, hinawakan ko yun. So, sobrang challenging. Sobrang challenging kasi sa personality ko na hindi kasi ako yung mabulyaw na tao. Hindi ako yung very hard na tao when it comes in leading people. Kasi president of classroom, president of whole campus, parang right leadership, ganun. Pero doon ako masyadong na-challenge sa pagiging CAT commander. Kasi dito, you have to be tough talaga. You have to be tough as in sobrang dami naming napagdaanan na mga problems na kung hindi ka sobrang na-build as tough, susuko ka talaga. Pero I'm so thankful because na-surpass ko naman siya. And then before ako maging CAT, na-offeran ako na parang maging president of the whole campus.
Wow.
So, very flattering kasi parang ang kalaban ko doon is the valedictorian of the whole campus. And then, between her and me, in elections sa mga tao, ako yung nanalo. But, mas gusto kong i-lead yung CAT. So, namili ako sa dalawa. Talagang binalance ko sa utak ko kung ano yung hahawakan ko talaga.
Huh.
So napili ko yung CAT, and then yung pagiging president ng whole campus, give up ko. Kasi alam ko naman na mas mahahawakan nung valedictorian yung CAT, yung whole campus. So ako, nag-focus na lang ako sa pagiging CAT officer. And then, ito pa yung nakaka-highlight talaga sa akin sa whole life ko. Kasi, I was a sacristan, altar server. Altar server is basically, you are assisting the priest in your parish or in your church.
Correct.
Sa mga misa, sa mga event, pang simbahan. So, sacristan ako, and I was elected then na maging presidente of our organization. First,
Wow.
sa school lang. Sa school lang. Maliit lang yung hawak ko. And then, na parang yung term nung last president is tapos na. Parang tapos na yung term niya. Tapos, it is time to turn over to another president, to another leadership. So, nagkaroon ng election and ako yung na-elect. So, I was like, paano ko to pagsasabayin yung dalawang major na na organization? Kasi, yung una, school lang eh.
Yeah.
Altar server sa school lang. Pero, ang nangyari, buong city na namin, buong Bulacan, municipality lang pala, buong municipality of Giginto na mga altar server is hawak ko. Ang dami kong sub-parish na, ang dami kong mga chapels na hinahawakan ng mga altar servers. Merong Malis, Kutkot, Poblasyon, Ilang-ilang, and marami pa. So, ang lawak nung ang lawak nung hawak ko na organization.
Wow.
So, ayun, na ko siya. Oo, sobrang saya ko kasi kahit papaano, nahawakan ko napagsabay ko yung pagiging CAT officer and pagiging altar server. So, ayun, yun yung leadership story ko.
Wow. Man, that's amazing. I mean, wow.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to see what the future has in store for you, man. You could balance 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, man. You the boss, man. You're the next generation. That's
Thank you,
good, man. I hope for those who are tuning in, they get inspired with that story. I mean, there's never such an age to think that you're young or old and all that stuff to achieve what you've done. So yeah, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Looking forward into the entrepreneurship segment, I have a feeling that it builds into that. I think I have a feeling that you've also. I mean, yeah, we mentioned Brycan Dayo, and you mentioned that you've had a conversation with all the other legends. So I guess that's gonna be a short conversation. What inspired you to get into entrepreneurship after all the madness that you're going through?
Interesting. So, nung bata ako, mga 9 to 10 or 8th grade, nahilig ako sa YouTube. Sobrang na-addict ako in watching YouTube talaga. At that time, ang mga pinapanood ko pa lang is mga entertainment. Yung mga, hindi pa uso masyado nun yung vlog eh. Pa-boom pa lang yung vlog nun. Pero napapanood ko na siya. Pinapanood ko. And then, there's one moment that merong recommended video about self-development. And then I clicked it. And then after that, parang napa-wow moment ako na, wow, this is pretty good. So, after that, ang dami ko nang pinanood na patuloy-tuloy about self-development, about entrepreneurship. sa self-development muna kasi most of na mga individual na napapanood ko about self-development is mga entrepreneurs. Talaga. Like Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Robert Kiyosaki, Gary V.
Yeah.
About self-motivation, about self-help, self-discipline. And then after that, parang na-tuned in na ako in entrepreneurship na wow, this is very challenging na parang na-inspire ako sa kanila na gawin. Kasi in entrepreneurship, we all know na may kasamang leadership yun eh. Di ba nga medyo inclined na ako in leadership. So parang na-challenge ako na paano mag-lead ng ganitong bagay. Then, ayun, dumating siya sa point na sobrang nahilig na ako manood ng about entrepreneurship, about books ng mga entrepreneur, self-development. And ito yung ito yung parang misconception ng iba na halimbawa, employee ka, tapos gusto mong mapadali yung buhay mo, magtatayo ka ng own business mo para yumaman ka agad. Pero for me, that is very wrong. That is very wrong kasi being an employee, I know it is pretty tough. But being an entrepreneur, it is double, triple, quadruple effort ng pagiging employee. Because entrepreneurship is hawak mo lahat eh. Maghahawa ka ng employee, maghahawa ka ng core leaders mo, yung sarili mo. So, before yung mga tao na pumapasok sa entrepreneurship na ang main goal nila ay gusto nilang yumaman, parang hindi siya hindi siya concrete na bagay na dapat motivation mo. Once napapasok ka in entrepreneurship, your main goal has to be you have to change the world. You have to change the norms. Not just the money. Yes, money is important.
Yeah.
Money, ito yung tandaan nyo. Money is just the result of your hard work. Of your goal pala. Money is the result of your goal. But, hindi dapat ang nasa utak nyo ay yung money, yung main goal nyo. Don't aim for money as your goal. You should aim to change the world, to help people, to bring value to the market, to bring value to the table. And the money will automatically go to you. Hindi siya yung main goal mo dapat. You should learn how to bring value to the table. You should learn how to properly communicate with other people. So that is my entrepreneurship story.
Wow. It's very powerful. Coming from a young kid, this is really something else. Now I feel old having this conversation with you, to be honest. And wow, that's so powerful. I mean, you've said a lot of powerful things. I don't even know how to quote you on anything. But one thing that caught my heart was, of course, I think you mentioned this in your earlier leadership conversation, is ang sarap mag-serve sa tao, sa kapwang tao. It's very powerful. I mean, the translation to that, of course, I'll translate that. But yeah, it's very, very powerful. And wow. I mean, more power to you. You look like you look like you're the voice of the next generation, and we need more people like you finding ways to express themselves, either through podcast to video cast, any cast, as long as you're doing something. and you're making that cast, like you mentioned, putting that value, then it's worth something. And that's what life is all about, and it's very powerful, very saying. I have major respects for Richard Bautista, just so you know. In my youth, in my time, a small history that I could share is that it was much more opposite than what you've gone through. And it was more like the direction was much more different. In my way, it was instead of going outwards and reaching out and providing value, it was more like self discovery first, and then you know trying to figure out your place in this world. So that's the short summary of what I had in my life. So yeah, I mean, this is some powerful stuff. I mean, I hope those who are tuning in are inspired and mesmerized, and hope they're fired up to bring change into the world, not just the Philippines, but the world. And yeah, of course, for my listeners who would want to connect with you via social media, how would they find you in social media, pal?
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook. I have a page, Richard Bautista. And then on Instagram, I have Richard Bautista __ because may Richard Bautista na nakapangalan. And then for my YouTube, which is my bread and butter, um, Richard Bautista. You can search that. And please do subscribe if uh, nagustuhan nyo yung content ko na pinaprovide sa inyo. Please do subscribe. Consider subscribing and liking and commenting and sharing it. It's a huge thing sa akin. Thank you if gagawin nyo yun. And then for my podcast, audio podcast, I have my Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. Just search the Richard Bautista Show. And basically that's it. And make sure guys na you subscribe also to Mr. Rajiv Daruswamy on his socials, because sobrang ang dami ring matututunan, mga stories, personal stories niya, and stories of other people na sobrang nakaka-inspire din. And yes, yun.
I want to say thank you. I didn't expect that, but yeah. I want to say thank you to my guest, the youngest guest. I think my second or my first. I don't know how many, because I've had a lot of these conversations. I want to say thank you for being a part of the show, and hopefully somewhere down the line, if I can book you again from your secretary, I hope I get to book you without contacting your secretary, and then let's do another collaboration here in the Rajiv Show. And yeah,
Sure.
I want to say, as a friend, as a fellow podcaster, I want to say I'm proud of you, pal. Keep doing what you do. You have you have a lot of good steps going on, and I think it's best that you should look forward now that you've set yourself and you've already set the standard. It's time to just keep updating and updating, just like your phone. You gotta update your apps. You gotta update your stuff, your thing, and more power to you. I mean, for support, I'm here. I'm sending virtual hugs. The recording of this conversation, by the way, is on Christmas, but the release of this episode is somewhere far away. So, I'm sending my virtual love, virtual hug, and I wish you the best. And hopefully to see you soon again in the Rajiv Show. So, cheers and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man.
And for those who are tuning in, I hope you are inspired. I hope you are fired up again, and get that fire going, get that power and that passion to build and build and build this thing. And I hope you learned a thing or two in this conversation. With that in mind, folks, cheers. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next episode.